Ayup, Nolan here. Today I'm going to fully explain how mana regeneration works in the first Descendant. I'll also explain the best ways to increase mana regeneration out of combat and in combat. But obviously the one you want to be aiming for is in combat mana regeneration, as that's the most effective and usable in fights. There's also a lot of information out there saying mana regeneration in combat is bugged. That is not actually the case. I'll explain in this video how it works properly. Right, so I've switched to SMO as he's mana hungry like crazy. I've took off all mana regeneration mods and I'm switching out my components so they're all blank with no mana regeneration included, just so I can show you the testing. As it stands, 3 out of the 4 components have options and modifiers that can increase MP recovery, be it in combat, out of combat, or just a general multiplier. So here's my character with completely blank slate. So default, you have 0.3 mana regeneration out of combat. That's just so after you fight, you just regen mana, so you're not stuck without mana the entirety of a fight if you can't kill anything for the little mana orbs. And depending on what character you're playing will depend on how much mana you have initially. So like Bunny, he'll have loads, whereas some other characters will have a tiny bit. There's even some characters without mana, which I'm not going to talk about at the moment because they just have a different way of working entirely. So, with my SMO, you have a starting mana of 125, at least at my level. So, I'm not max level yet, level 20, so that will increase when you level up. But it doesn't really matter because the percentages of the recharge is going to be the same regardless of the amount of mana you have. It just makes it so if you have more mana, different abilities will use a different amount of mana. So the more mana you've got, it'll use less and less and less. The bar won't go down as much, but it'll recharge at the same rate. So yeah, that's how it works basically. So being in combat is when your radar is red. So the ring around the radar being red means you're in combat. So therefore my mana is not recharging. The second the red ring's gone, I'm classed as being out of combat, therefore it's recharging. If you then get shot, you're also then back in combat. So depending on what modifier you're expecting to be the one that triggers. There's also a caveat to that, which I'll explain at the end of the video. There's several modules that you can apply to your characters to give you more mana and more mana regeneration. So I'll explain some of the better ones you want to be running for high uptime and mana so you can just spam abilities. So the first module will be energy collection. This increases your mana regeneration rate by 57.7%. As you can see, I have a modifier now of 0.57. So the way it works is, say 0.5 on a modifier will be a 50% increase, and a 1 will be a 100% increase. So that's how it works basically. So this will be increasing the 0.3 out of combat modifier that I'll have on my character. So that then gets increased by a 50% value basically. As you can see, the second I leave combat, the mana bar's recharging a tiny bit faster. There is a way to increase this massively though with components, which I'll show you shortly. The next mod I'm going to talk about is selective recovery. This is an increase of 52.2, but reduces health recovery by about 4.4%. As you can see, the second I leave combat, the bar recharges a lot faster. It's a shame you can't see the numbers on the bar, even if you change the settings like you can with health. Hopefully they add that in the future update because it'll help massively with these sorts of videos. The next mod I want to mention is Enlightenment. This will give you more mana to play with when you're spamming abilities. So this will make it so you can spam more abilities before you run out. It'll also make it so when you use the ability, the bar won't go down as much just because you have more mana to begin with. And any percent increases will apply a bit more percent to any percent it's going up, if that makes sense. Right, moving on to components. As you might have noticed, components can roll with many different attributes, and many of them attributes are related to mana recovery, be it in combat, out of combat, or just a general multiplier to all MP recovery. So the auxiliary component can roll with out of combat increases. So this is it with it added to my character with all the modules buffing it even more. And just with that one module, it's nearly 600% faster recharge speed when out of combat, which is a huge difference. Next, I'm going to show you the MP recovery in combat modifier. This rolls on the sensor component. It won't scale as high because at default it's a lot lower than the in combat percentage increase, because obviously it'd be a bit unbalanced if you have that insane like 600% increase, but it's still possible to bump this really high with the correct setup. As you can see, I'm currently in combat as the radar is red and I'm spamming abilities and attacking enemies, and the mana bar is still recharging, be it slower than being out of combat. As you can see, my out of combat recovery is a 0.3 because I took the auxiliary component off. But I also now have MP recovery in combat at 0.28, which is almost as high as the default out of combat recovery rate. And then that gets increased by the MP recovery modifier on top of that as well. Next, I'm going to show you MP recovery in combat in an actual mission, because a lot of people think MP recovery in combat is bullshit, because you'll be fighting a Colossus, you'll be in a mission, and your mana won't be recharging, even though it's supposed to be. This is because it actually stops if you're attacked for a couple seconds. And in a lot of fights, especially Colossi fights, you're constantly taking a little bit of damage, be it by the little kingfishers that flip around and hit you when you're trying to reload, or you fall in the lava, take a little bit of damage, so your mana don't recharge for a few seconds again. So that is why, basically. You're still recharging in combat, but it just stops every time you take damage. Real quick, before I forget, the last component you want will be a memory component, because that can roll with a MP recovery modifier to then increase your general MP recovery modifier further, which then increases any other modifiers you have, be it in combat or out of combat. So make sure you get a good roll on that as well, because that'll increase MP recovery wherever you are. So I'm just going to quickly start a random mission to show you that my MP recovery recharges, and then we'll stop when I take damage. Right, so I'm going to burn a bit of mana so you can see what I mean. There we are. So shoot an enemy, I'm now in combat, and then as soon as he hits me, my mana stops recharging and I'm still in combat. So this is what I mean. So it doesn't matter how much damage, be it a small shot or damage over time, it'll take about 3 seconds, almost 3 seconds exactly really. So if you get hit, you need your mana back, you're going to have to get in cover or roll around to try not get hit, and then your mana should recharge. But yeah, that's about it really. If you found this video useful, a like and subscribe would be appreciated. But yeah, anyway, until next time, see ya and have a great day.